He knelt alone beside the coffin under the pale morning sky. No ceremony, no final salute, just silence and the leash of a hero still warm in his gloved hand. The town had moved on, but he hadn't, until a single bark pierced the cold air. Not a memory, not imagined, real, sharp, alive. It cut through the quiet like a whisper from beyond, and in that instant everything shifted. What came next would unravel betrayal, ignite justice, and prove that sometimes miracles walk on four legs. If you believe love never truly dies, and courage echoes past the grave, Red Hollow, Colorado, mid-January, would test that belief. A storm had rolled in from the west, like a tide of hush, swallowing the mountain town in white. Pines bent beneath frost-laden limbs, and Main Street lay deserted save for drifting snow and flickering lamplights. Beneath the gray sky, the cemetery sat like frozen breath headstones, poking through the snow like memories refusing to stay buried. Jace Holloway stood alone at the fresh grave, his dark blue uniform half hidden by swirling snow. He was 36, broad-shouldered, lean and strong from years of service. A faint scar ran along his jaw, a relic from a gang bust gone wrong long ago. His jet-black hair slicked back with melting snowflakes, contrasted storm-gray eyes brimming with grief that hadn't blinked in days. Titan had been more than a dog. He had been a partner, a constant, a mirror to the parts of Jace no one else could see. The GermanShepherd had served 6 years trained with precision courage in his veins and a bark that could freeze any criminal mid-step. Titan didn't just follow orders. He anticipated them. At 9, he had slowed slightly, yet still outpaced rookies in instinct and loyalty. Now that loyalty lay buried beneath snow and soil, Jace held the leash tightly worn leather, scented faintly with Titan's fur. A small group of officers kept a respectful distance, hats off, heads down. Mayor May Whitford and Sheriff Silas Kane had not come snowstorm excuses, or perhaps they couldn't face the silence Titan had left behind. A woman stepped forward quietly, her boots crunching in the snow. Nora Flint, the town's sole full-time detective, paused beside Jace. In her early 40s, tall, slender, with red hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, her face bore the wear of loss, not age. Years ago, she had lost a son to a roadside bombing overseas. Since then, she carried herself with distant dignity, kind but untouchable. She placed a hand on Jace's shoulder without a word. Words weren't needed. He saved me. Nora. Jace murmured, his voice hoarse. One more time, he just walked in and took it like he knew she nodded. He always knew. The storm thickened. Flakes fell like ash from a sky unwilling to let go. Jace knelt, brushing snow from the headstone. The granite was still raw, chiseled only yesterday. Titan loyal to the last breath. Jace wanted to believe it had ended cleanly, that the low-level dealer Curtis Vale had panicked and fired blindly, and Titan had leapt between the bullet and him without hesitation. That it had been clean. But it didn't feel clean. Titan's body had been found too far from the suspect. His eyes wide, even in death, locked with Jace's as if trying to say something. A silent warning. And the wound, small, almost surgical, unlike a typical .38 impact, didn't add up. Nothing did. Jace had buried those doubts with his partner until this morning. Tucked beneath the windshield of his cruiser, held by snow and wiper blade, lay a folded sheet of paper, no stamp, no name. Titan didn't die the way you think. Dig deeper. No signature. No explanation. Just those chilling words and a smear darker than ink along the edge of the page. Blood. Coffee. He didn't know, but something snapped inside him. Standing again at the grave, his gut felt different, keyed into a lie too smooth. Behind him, Father Amos Grant intoned the final prayer over the wind. The elderly priest, hunched with age, had known Titan often feeding him scraps during station visits. Even now his hands trembled with the weight of loss. Jace didn't hear the prayer, his focus fixed on the headstone. The leash twitched in his hand. A ghost memory, Titan pulling, alerting barking. But now no bark, only wind. Snow fell harder, a white hush swallowing the cemetery. Levi Cole, a young junior officer with freckles and a nervous habit of adjusting his belt, whispered, "Sir, the storm's worsening. Should we head back?" Jace nodded without looking back. "You go ahead, I'll follow." Levi hesitated for a moment, then retreated with the others, their boots crunching away into the distance. Nora lingered a moment longer. "You think something's wrong?" she finally asked. "I know there is," he replied. "Then don't stop digging." She turned, fading into the snow, leaving Jace staring at the mound that now held 6 years of loyalty, courage, and unspoken conversation. He didn't know where to begin, but one truth burned in him. Titan hadn't just died. He had died trying to send a message, and now Jace would listen, even if it meant digging through every shadow in Red Hollow. By morning the storm had eased, but the chill lingered like a wound refusing to heal. Jace Holloway sat in his office at the Red Hollow Police Department, lights off a mug of black coffee, untouched at his elbow. The station was unusually quiet for a Monday, most officers still clearing storm debris from roads and sidewalks. Frost clung to the window edges like desperate fingers. Jace wasn't thinking about the world outside. His eyes were fixed on the report before him, Titan's autopsy. He had requested it personally from the County Forensic Division the night before. What arrived that morning was polished overly so. Every line felt scrubbed, as if someone was trying not just to present facts, but to sell a version of the truth. The report claimed a single gunshot to the side, friendly fire, or suspect return fire. But Jace remembered clearly no visible blood at the scene. Titan's fur was clean, the body strangely cold despite the recent death, and something else was off the time of death. The report listed it an hour before the unit even arrived. He leaned back, jaw clenched. If they lied about the time, what else had they fabricated? A knock came at the door, soft, uncertain. "Come in," Jace called. The door opened to reveal Lila Vaughn, the local veterinarian. Mid-30s, compact, sun-browned skin, purposeful stride. Her auburn hair was tied in a simple ponytail, jeans, under a white coat dusted with melting snow. Lila wasn't just the town vet. She'd been Titan's doctor, one of the few people Jace trusted outside the badge. "Didn't expect to see you here," Jace said, waving her in. "I wasn't planning on coming," she admitted, brushing snow from her shoulders. "But something's been nagging me since Titan's final exam." "Final exam," Jace raised an eyebrow. "The body scan I did before transferring him to the funeral home. You remember I requested to see him. I remember he said, leaning forward. I took images," she continued, pulling a USB from her pocket. "I didn't say anything then because honestly I didn't know what I was seeing. But there's a puncture wound, very small, just behind the front left leg. Not a bullet. No burn ring, no metal residue," Jace asked. "Almost like an injection site." Lila's voice tightened. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I've seen this before. 2 years ago, another canine in Boulder died under mysterious circumstances. The vet who questioned it lost her job. I didn't want to believe our town would cover something like this. But now, she hesitated. Now I think someone's erasing the truth. Jace didn't speak. He pulled the dash cam hard drive from his patrol car and plugged it into his computer. The folder was empty. That's what had gnawed at him since last night. All data from the raid gone, except for a ghost log entry. A record that had once existed but was manually erased. No crash, no corruption. Someone had deleted the file. He checked the station's internal log. 2 names appeared: Jace Holloway and Brock Lawson. Brock. Of course. He hadn't spoken much to Brock since the raid. They had been in the same unit tasked with approaching the east side of the abandoned mill. Brock had been the first to draw, claiming he saw the suspect move behind a stack of crates. Titan had surged forward, barking furiously. Then chaos. Gunfire. Smoke. Brock claimed Titan was caught in the crossfire. That was the last Jace saw of his partner before everything went dark. Brock Lawson was tall, stocky, early 40s, mustache, groomed grin rarely reaching his eyes. Always more politician than officer, shaking hands, press interviews the face of cooperation. But off camera, a temper and a problem with authority. Jace tapped the intercom. "Hank, is Simmons on duty today?" The dispatcher's voice came through sharp and no nonsense. "Out sick, supposedly. Was he in the building yesterday?" Briefly. "Just dropped something off." Why Jace didn't answer. He closed the autopsy file, pocketed Lila's USB, and stood. "Do you think it was deliberate?" Lila asked, her voice low. "I don't know," Jace said, "but I intend to find out." Outside, snow had started again, gentle but persistent. Lila walked alongside him toward the front. "Whatever you're about to dig up, Jace, be careful. If someone's hiding this, they won't stop at lies." Jace gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Lies are easy to undo," he murmured. "You just have to make the truth louder." As she left, Jace returned to his cruiser, brushing snow off the windshield. His mind wandered back to the letter tucked there the day before. Words that circled like wolves in his head. Titan didn't die the way you think. The forest surrounding Red Hollow was ancient pines and cedars knotted into a dense canopy that muffled wind and time alike. Snow blanketed the trail, crunching beneath Jace Holloway's boots as he followed a barely visible path. His breath steamed in the cold air, and the distant creak of branches above reminded him of another time, another mission. 6 years ago, during Titan's early field training, they had stumbled upon an abandoned cabin deep in this forest. It had become a private spot, a place where Titan had led him once without command, as if something there spoke to the dog's instincts. At the time, Jace had dismissed it a broken-down shack miles from town. But now, with the ghost of Titan's death still fresh and unanswered questions mounting, that memory clawed its way back. He moved with deliberate steps, hand hovering near his holster. No patrols, no cell signal. Just pine needles, snow, and secrets. After nearly 30 minutes, the cabin appeared between the trees like a ghost rising from fog. It leaned slightly, shingles, missing windows, cracked front door ajar. Untouched for years, yet something twisted in Jace's gut. Outside the doorway, faint paw prints were pressed into the snow. Large, deep, fresh. Not Titan's. Wider and rounder, likely another breed alone. No boot tracks. Just the animal. Jace knelt beside them, brushing a glove over one. The depth told him the dog was heavy. Adult. Recently here. His eyes scanned the area until they locked on something half buried in the snow a few feet ahead, black nylon glinting under frost. He moved closer and pulled it free. A canine training collar, the type issued to law enforcement dogs, but this one bore a worn brass nameplate, Shadow. Unit 23, not Titan. He flipped it over and noticed a faded chip tag sewn into the fabric. Pocketing it for later, Jace realized there were now 2 canines, one dead under mysterious circumstances, one lost out here or alive. Inside the cabin, dust clung thick to every surface. Walls bore faded deer hunting posters. A cracked mirror hung beside a fireplace, untouched for years. A tangle of dirty, shredded blankets lay in a corner. Jace crouched beside them. Tufts of fur were embedded in the fabric. Someone or something had been sleeping here. Then carved into the wood near the doorframe, he saw initials. Not old, not weathered, recent. AL. Beneath it, a date, 07-14. His mind flashed through memory-scanning mental files until he landed on a cold case. Finn Rivers, 6 years old, went missing on a camping trip with his father near Miller's Creek. Last seen in a red jacket. Disappeared without a trace. The case went cold after 3 months, but Jace remembered vividly. Titan had been part of the search. The scent trail had gone nowhere. Titan had acted oddly, pawing at rocks, growling softly toward the northern forest. Jace had assumed the child drowned, or was taken far away. They never found the body. And now, 6 months later, initials scratched into wood. Could Finn still be alive? And what did a second K9 have to do with him? A low, instinctive growl sounded outside the door. Jace's hand went to his sidearm, then paused. Through the cracked frame, he saw a flash of golden-brown fur vanish into the tree line. A dog. Big. Likely the one that made the tracks. No aggression in the growl, it sounded like a warning. He moved quickly into the open snow crunching beneath him. Trees stood still. Whatever had been watching was gone. Exhaling, he stepped back toward the cabin, scanning the tree line one last time. Inside, he pulled out his phone, knowing it wouldn't connect. He used the camera to capture the paw prints, the collar, the initials. He wasn't sure what it all meant yet, but it felt like the threads were beginning to weave together. On the walk back, Jace turned the collar over in his hand again, Shadow. Not a dog he had ever worked with, maybe from another department. Maybe a discarded dog like Titan could have become. Too many canines ended up in silence these days. By the time he reached his cruiser, dusk had settled. The weak sun slipping behind gray clouds cast the mountains in bruised lavender light. He climbed in, flipped on the heater, and placed the collar on the dashboard. Next step, dig through records. Unit 23, Shadow. See if it had ever been assigned to Red Hollow. See if it had gone missing. And follow the trail of a boy whose name had almost faded from memory. But before pulling onto the road, Jace glanced at the collar once more. His breath caught. Scratched beneath the metal tag, nearly invisible, were 3 letters etched by something small and sharp. AID. The night fell heavy over Red Hollow, a blanket of silence drawn too tight. Jace Holloway lay in bed, though resting wasn't the word. His muscles ached from tension, not fatigue. His mind refused stillness, gnawing at fragments of memory that wouldn't surface. Shadow's collar sat on his nightstand like a relic from another life. The initials carved into the cabin wood still haunted him, AL. And now that small word hidden beneath the brass plate aid. Coincidence. He no longer believed in them. Sleep came in fragments, never as peace, but as distortion. He stood once more in the fog-drenched memory of Titan's death night. Gunshots echoed distant, but softened by time. Then Titan rushing forward into the dark, his silhouette framed in smoke and light. And those eyes. piercing, human-like, locking onto Jace one last time. No fear, only defiance, urgency. Then a voice over the comms barked, "Holloway, fall back, that's an order." Why Jace had never questioned it then, not when everything went sideways so fast. But in the dream, the tone had been wrong. Calculated, not protective. Like they wanted him out of the way. He jolted awake, sweat beading despite the cold. The dream wasn't just memory, it had shifted. Free from distraction, his mind gave permission to remember what it had tried to bury. He dressed quickly, tugged on coat and gloves, and headed to the office well before dawn. The station was dark, save for a single light over the records room. Jace flicked it on and pulled Titan's behavioral logs from the canine training files. Most were routine monthly checkups, field notes, maintenance certifications. Then something stood out. A report marked confidential dated 18 months earlier, submitted not by Jace, but by Lila Vaughn. He opened it. It detailed an incident with Titan and another officer, Colt Briggs, mid-30s, tall, blonde, buzz-cut broad like a former linebacker with a reputation for short tempers and long grudges. During a warehouse training simulation, Titan reportedly bit Colt on the wrist after the man struck him during an obedience drill. The report noted Colt's excessive force, and though Lila recorded the injury as minor, the psychological report flagged the encounter as potentially triggering for the canine. Colt was suspended for 3 weeks. Jace had never known why he had been on leave then. Buried quietly in paperwork, another attachment, a voice memo. Jace plugged in headphones and pressed play. A minute of silence, then a series of sharp barks slightly distorted. Pitch irregular, not aggressive, but patterned, repeating. Pause. Then 4 short barks. 1 pause. 2 barks, another pause. 3. Lila's voice followed, soft and skeptical. The rhythm, almost intentional. Not normal. I'm logging this in case it repeats. Jace played it again and again. Not random. Titan had been trying to say something not just instinctively, but like he knew a code no one else could read. Later that morning, Jace found Lila at her clinic just outside town. The white building stood quiet under the rising sun, the American flag stiff in the breeze. Lila, in a thick sweater beneath her lab coat, met him at the front desk. Sleeves pushed to elbows, faded shepherd tattoo on her forearm. "I didn't expect visitors," she said with a tired smile, "especially not haunted ones like yours." Jace went straight to the point. "You submitted the report about the calendar. Why didn't you tell me?" Lila hesitated, then sighed. "I wanted to, but after that, consequences." He started watching me, subtle, nothing direct, but comments showing up uninvited. Then someone in admin suggested I rethink filing sensitive complaints if I wanted to keep the county contract. I didn't want enemies. Jace nodded slowly. Had he ever worked with K9s again? Not officially, but Jace knew he was on the list for reassignment. Another dog had been prepped for field duty but never made it. "You mean—" Shadow Lila's eyes sharpened. "How do you know that name?" I found his collar. Lila went quiet, then moved to a nearby cabinet, unlocking it. She pulled out a manila file and laid it on the counter. "I didn't include this in official records," she admitted, "because it wouldn't have mattered. This comes from a wellness check I did on a stray spotted near the southern ridge 2 nights ago. Large German Shepherd, shaggy coat, limping. She couldn't catch him, but enough evidence told her he wasn't wild. He wore a torn collar scar on his left ear." "Left ear?" Jace asked. "Someone tried to cut out an ID chip," Lila said grimly, and failed. A pause hung heavy. "Where did you last see him?" "Between Hayward's Trail and Timber Hollow, near the old quarry. He watched me a few minutes, then ran." Jace nodded. Shadow's alive. Maybe with the boy, Lila leaned closer. Whatever's happening, Jace, it didn't start with Titan. It won't stop unless we push back. He said nothing, but the tension in his chest shifted less confusion, more fire. That night, Jace sat alone at the station headphones, on playing Titan's recorded barks, over and over, scribbling the pattern onto paper, a code, a cry for help, a clue. One thing was certain, Titan had tried to leave a message. Now Jace was finally starting to hear it. The cemetery lay on the western edge of Red Hollow, thick pines fog clinging longer than usual. On the 5th night since Titan's burial, Jace Holloway stood beneath crooked branches and frost-covered stones, breath steaming in the cold. Alone, dressed in black hood-up gloves on heart, pounding harder than any stakeout in his career, he waited until after midnight, after patrols passed and road lights dimmed. Pride no longer mattered. The official reports had failed him. Lies buried answers 6 feet below. The grave was a shallow rectangle of packed dirt, loosely held by fresh snowfall. Jace moved quickly, small shovel in hand, lifting soil with quiet precision. Each clink of metal on rock echoed like guilt. The coffin, a standard-issue police K9 casket, emerged after half an hour of digging. He paused, heart tight, then unscrewed the top. Titan lay as remembered serene coat, dark against the white interior fabric. But examining the chest, Jace found no gunshot wound, no scar, no burn, no broken bone. Instead, a circular bruise with a pin-sized hole above the front leg. A needle mark. Grief and fury stormed through him. Titan had not been shot. He had been injected, silenced. Jace gently resealed the coffin, replaced the soil, erasing his presence, with the care of burying more than a body. He was burying a lie. An hour later, he circled the cemetery to the rear past overgrown weeds and rusted fences. There lay the entrance to a collapsed stone shaft long sealed in town records. But Jace remembered Titan scratching near it long before his death. Back then, he thought it nothing. Now, he knew better. He pried the stone aside, flashlight aimed down. A ladder bolted to the shaft disappeared into darkness. He descended slowly, the air thick and cold like a tomb's breath. At the bottom, the tunnel yawned stone walls lined with rotted wooden supports. It had once been part of an old mining access shaft, long forgotten. He moved forward 10 feet 20. The air smelled of mold dust and disinfectant. He turned a corner and saw it. A corridor of cages, half-rusted, doorless, unmistakably holding dogs. Torn leashes, empty bowls, claw marks on concrete. Further in, crates with outdated K9 training manuals labeled with unit numbers from unknown cities. One read property of Apex Tactical Solutions. He froze. That name was familiar. A private security firm recently winning contracts in several Colorado counties. But what did they want with discarded K9s? He picked up a ledger, half buried under papers. Inside records, dog names, units, behavior codes. Some crossed out. Notes read, redirected non-compliant terminated. Not just training, it was culling. Then a soft thud behind him. He spun gun-raised flashlight, cutting through shadows. Silence. Then paw steps. Emerging from the shadows was a large GermanShepherd. Fur thick, slightly matted. Its left ear bore a jagged scar, the same one Lila had described. The dog didn't bark. It didn't growl. It simply stared. Alert, calm. Shadow Jace whispered. He slowly lowered his weapon. The dog's eyes flicked to the whistle clipped to Jace's vest. Instinctively, he gave a sharp blow. The dog straightened instantly, tail, low ears forward, the same posture Titan had assumed during high-alert drills. Then Shadow moved, not charging, but circling Jace, slowly sniffing his boots before settling into a watchful sit. No aggression, no fear, only evaluation. Jace knelt, extending his hand. Shadow sniffed, then pressed his head briefly against Jace's palm. It was a test. And Jace had passed. Above ground, Lila waited by her truck at the edge of Timber Hollow Road, flashlight sweeping the tree line. Jace appeared Shadow, trotting silently beside him, like a ghost reborn. "He followed you?" she asked, eyes wide. "No," Jace said. "He found me." Lila crouched to meet Shadow's eyes. The dog didn't flinch, only sniffed her hand before returning attention to Jace. "He responds to the whistle." "Just like Titan," she said. "Same commands, same responses. I think he was one of them." "One of the redirected," Jace replied, "but he escaped." Lila glanced toward the woods. "What kind of place does that to animals like him? The kind that doesn't expect them to survive," Jace said. They loaded Shadow into the back of Lila's truck, wrapped in a blanket. His breathing was steady now, more relaxed. As Lila drove off toward her clinic, Jace stood by the road, eyes scanning the tree line. What he had uncovered beneath the cemetery wasn't just a holding site, it was a system, a program designed to erase, rewrite, and repurpose. Shadow had remembered, and now so had Jace. Meanwhile, Brock Lawson sat alone in a corner booth at Mill Creek Diner, stirring cream into his coffee with slow, deliberate swirls. Early evening, mostly empty, except for a waitress restocking sugar packets and an elderly couple quietly sharing a slice of peach pie. Brock's uniform jacket hung over the back of the booth, revealing a plain gray t-shirt stretched across his broad chest. He still wore that boyish, practiced politician smile, tight at the edges, rehearsed for cameras. But his eyes never lied sharp calculating, always measuring if a conversation was worth his time. Jace Holloway stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed softly. His coat still carried the faint scent of dirt from digging Titan's grave nights before. Brock looked up, hesitated, then nodded as if this was just another casual meeting between old colleagues. Jace, Brock said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Didn't expect to see you here after hours." "I wasn't planning to talk here," Jace replied, sliding into the booth. "But I figured I'd give you the courtesy of doing this in public." Brock leaned back, arms spread across the booth. "Doing what exactly?" "Cut the act," Jace said. "You and I both know what this is about." Brock's mouth twitched a half smirk. "You seem tense. Something bothering you?" "I just came from the old tunnel behind the cemetery," Jace said. "Found cages, tags a ledger, dogs that went missing or washed out from service. One of them had your signature on the exit form, a canine named Shadow." Brock's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Brock said. "Those files were handled by department admin." "Cut it," Jace snapped. "You were the last to access Titan's dashcam footage. You deleted the record from that raid night and you lied about what happened to him." Brock dropped his spoon into the mug with a clink. "You've been digging, haven't you?" Jace didn't answer. He leaned forward, voice low. "Did Titan bite you? Is that why you hated him?" Brock's jaw clenched. "He attacked me during a control drill," Jace said. "He stopped you from hurting a rookie dog." "I remember now," Brock said. "You were pissed about being passed over for canine handler. You took it out on a pup and Titan intervened." Brock leaned closer, voice hardening. "You don't understand what's really happening. Those dogs, they're assets. You think the city cares what happens once they're retired or flagged?" Jace ground out. "Apex offered a solution. Better than euthanizing them. You sold their files, their training behaviors. You knew what Apex was doing. Jace said. They wanted obedience. That's all. Brock shrugged. Some of those dogs were too unpredictable. Others were retrainable. Titan was a problem. Jace's fists tightened under the table. He knew. Brock continued. He started reacting weird whenever I was near, growled, didn't listen. He was going to get flagged as compromised. I warned you. You didn't listen. Jace stared at him in disbelief. You had him killed. Brock leaned back, unbothered. You think you're the first who cared more about the dog than the job Titan was a liability. Then why fake the autopsy? Jace pressed. Why cover it up if it was protocol? Brock's silence spoke louder than any answer. Then he smiled. Cold. Final. Because not everyone agreed. Sheriff Silas Kane tried to stop it. Raised a red flag on the Apex contract. 3 days later he retired early, and now no one questions procurement. Not even you. Until now. Jace's breath froze. Kane, the former sheriff, a man of integrity, had retired unexpectedly just weeks before Titan's death. Jace had never questioned it, but now he saw the pattern. You sold us out. Brock stood pulling his jacket from the booth. You have no proof. Just guesses. You'll sound crazy without hard evidence. Good luck, Jace. As Brock walked out the door, Jace remained seated, jaw clenched until it ached. The bell rang as the door closed behind the traitor. From a far corner booth, someone emerged. A quiet presence unnoticed until now. Nora Flint. She approached slowly, trench coat, dusted with snow, auburn hair looser than usual, strands framing her stern-lined face. She looked at Jace with eyes that had seen too much, but still burned with quiet fire. I didn't want to interrupt, she said, voice soft but unshaking. I figured you'd get more if he thought he was safe. Jace exhaled. How long were you listening? Long enough, she said. We'll make it stick, but we'll need Lila and that ledger. Jace nodded, and Shadow Nora raised an eyebrow. The ghost dog. He's not a ghost. He remembers, just like Titan did. Nora paused, then said quietly, so do I. The morning air still held the sharpness of winter, though snow was finally giving way to patches of thawed earth. Lila Vaughn's clinic stood bathed in golden light porch, creaking softly as wind passed over its wooden frame. Jace stood on the steps holding a leash that felt too familiar, too heavy. At the other end sat the dog he now called Ranger. Ranger had spent the past few days under Lila's care, healing, eating, and slowly remembering. He wasn't Titan. His coat was darker, rougher frame, slightly taller. His left ear bore a jagged scar, a permanent mark of the life he had escaped. But it was his eyes amber sharp with awareness and pain that stopped Jace cold. They didn't just watch. They judged, calculated, listened, as if he had seen more than a dog ever should. Lila stepped out behind him, mug of tea in her hands, faded flannel under a quilted vest braid, pulled tight and practical. Boots muddy from morning rounds, with her other rescues she carried herself with the quiet steadiness of someone used to fixing broken things without expecting thanks. He's more responsive to you than anyone else, she said, watching Ranger sit with calm alertness. He hasn't growled once since you started using hand signals. Jace gave a slow nod. He knows them. Not perfectly, but enough. He's not guessing. He's remembering. Muscle memory. Something deeper. Lila glanced at the dog. Have you decided? Jace looked down at the leash. His name is Ranger, she smiled gently. Not a replacement, huh? No. A legacy. Later that day, Jace took Ranger for a walk through Red Hollow Cemetery. The snow had melted into patches of pale mud and brittle grass. They passed Titan's grave. Jace slowed, resting his hand on the stone for a moment without speaking. Ranger stood still, ears up, gaze locked, not on the grave, but something behind it. He began to move, not run. A slow, deliberate pace, like following a scent that didn't come from the ground. Jace followed, as Ranger led him toward the far western fence line, where a grove of pine trees clustered like sentinels, one taller than the other's, roots exposed from years of runoff and erosion. Ranger approached the old tree, sniffing its base. Then suddenly he began to dig. Sharp, measured strokes with his front paws, not frantic, purposeful. Jace stepped forward as a piece of dark plastic peeked through the dirt. He knelt, brushing soil aside, and pulled out a weather-worn USB drive wrapped in brittle plastic. He stared at it for a long moment. "He led me here," he whispered. Back at the station, Jace plugged the drive into a secure terminal in the evidence room. The folder contained a single audio file. He hit play. The recording started with light static, then two voices, one unmistakably Brock Lawson, the other unfamiliar male, clipped businesslike. "He's showing signs of resistance," Brock said. "Growling during briefings, not following Apex redirect protocols." "He's too attached to Holloway," the second man said. "We warned you loyalty like that is dangerous." "What do you want me to do?" Brock asked, voice cold, pausing. "Administer the solution, quietly. Make it look like a field failure. We don't want another calendar situation." The clip ended. Jace leaned back, heart pounding. This wasn't speculation. It was a confession. He bagged the drive in an evidence pouch, labeled it, and placed it alongside the old Apex documents, the tunnel photos, and the collar marked Shadow. The chain was tightening now. Pieces no longer scattered, waiting to be arranged into something irrefutable. That night, Jace sat down and wrote the report himself. No embellishment, just facts layered chronological, supported by images and recordings. It included Titan's death, the deleted footage, the hidden tunnel under the cemetery, the recovery of Shadow, and now the audio proof that Apex had knowingly ordered a kill on a non-compliant K9 partner. He encrypted the report and sent it directly to the FBI's Animal Services Task Force. A long shot, but if even one agent had a conscience, it might be enough. Outside, the first snow in days began falling again, thin and silent. Jace stood in the station's training yard, Ranger seated across from him under the floodlights. "Down," he said. Ranger obeyed immediately. Eyes locked, steady still. Jace reached into his coat and pulled Titan's old K9 badge, bent at the edges, but still gleaming faintly. He clipped it gently to Ranger's collar next to the name tag Lila had engraved hours earlier. "You're not replacing him," Jace whispered, "but you carry what he left behind." Ranger didn't move, just watched. Same posture, same silence, same heart. The courthouse steps of Red Hollow stood silent in the golden hush of early morning. Flags waved gently in the cold breeze, the town holding its breath. Jace stood still, coat zipped to his collar, the cold forgotten beneath the weight of the moment. Brock Lawson, once colleague, once friend, was led away in cuffs. Shoulders slumped, jaw tight, eyes empty. He didn't resist, didn't speak. FBI agents who had swept in over the past 2 weeks had unraveled the whole rotten web. Apex Tactical Solutions exposed contracts, terminated operations, dismantled. Federal files now contained Jace's evidence as Exhibit A, forged reports, deleted footage, secret tunnels, coded conversations, and one old USB dug from the roots of a pine tree by a dog who never gave up. Nora Flint stood beside Jace Coat, dark as her expression, red hair loose in the wind. She had worked like a shadow, connecting the dots, ensuring none of this could be buried. "We did it." "No," Jace replied, watching the van door slam behind Brock. "They did," he looked down at Ranger. The dog stood tall, alert badge, freshly clipped to his collar. In his amber eyes burned the same unwavering fire that once lived in Titan, the same instinct, the same promise. Later that morning, the town gathered beneath open skies at the edge of Timber Hollow, where the new park had just been completed. What had once been a tangle of forgotten training fields was now Titan's Watch, a memorial and a beginning. A dedication stone stood tall, etched with Titan's silhouette, mid-run above the inscription, for those who protected even when no one else believed. Mayor May Whitford, sharp-eyed and dignified in her slate-gray coat, addressed the townspeople with reverence. "This park honors not only one brave canine, but all who serve with loyalty the world too often forgets." She turned to the front row. "And today we welcome a new protector to our ranks." Lila Vaughn, standing quietly in the crowd, flushed as the mayor called her forward. For her unwavering care of our four-legged officers and role in exposing injustice, Dr. Lila Vaughn is hereby appointed veterinary advisor to the Red Hollow Canine Unit. Applause followed, modest but sincere. Lila bowed her head slightly, braid brushing her shoulder. "As for them," she said softly, "not for me." Jace stepped to the podium, Ranger at his side. He didn't need a speech. Instead, he clipped a new silver badge to Ranger's collar, Unit 214, engraved that morning. "You're not replacing Titan," he whispered. "You're carrying him forward." The crowd began to disperse when Ranger suddenly stiffened. Head turned toward the tree line beyond the memorial path. One ear tilted nose high. Jace felt it immediately, the tension in the leash, the alert, the focus. Ranger had already picked up on something no orders needed. He sprinted toward the western woods, weaving through pines and snow-patched underbrush. Jace ran after him, heart hammering. Nora and Lila followed without hesitation. Ranger reached a half-collapsed hunting shed overgrown with vines and moss. At its base, he began to dig, not chasing a scent, but with furious, deliberate force. Jace knelt beside him, tearing away frozen earth until a wooden hatch emerged beneath the debris. It was padlocked, but the wood was rotted. With one solid kick, Jace cracked it open and froze. Inside was a small concrete chamber barely 6 feet across, damp and dark. Huddled in the corner was a boy, dirty, pale arms wrapped around his knees, lips chapped, eyes red but breathing. Lila dropped to her knees. "Vitals are weak, but he's alive. Oh my God, he's alive." Nora moved her flashlight closer. The boy blinked against the light. Then in a faint whisper, "Is he gone?" "The man with the gloves." Jace's voice cracked. "What's your name, kid?" The boy looked up, hesitant. "Finn," he said. "Finn Rivers." Lila gasped. "Jace, that's the boy. The one from 6 months ago." A flood of realization hit Jace like a wave. The initials on the cabin wall, the collar, the tunnel, the ledger. Apex hadn't just taken dogs. They had taken witnesses. Finn had seen something, and they'd kept him quiet. But Ranger remembered. He'd been held nearby, trained in the same darkness, and now he had come back to finish what Titan started. Jace scooped Finn into his coat. The boy didn't resist. He simply looked at Ranger and whispered, "You came back. You were in my dream." That night, as the sun dipped below the trees, Jace stood once more beneath the Titan memorial. Ranger sat beside him, head resting gently against Jace's knee. Behind them, Nora coordinated statements with the FBI. Lila sat with Finn, wrapped in blankets, drinking cocoa brought by the mayor herself. The boy would heal. The town would remember. And Titan's legacy, now living in a dog named Ranger, would never fade. Sometimes what we lose isn't truly gone. Sometimes God allows one door to close so another can open. Through a bark in the dark, a paw print in the snow, or a whisper from a child who's been found. Titan may be gone, but through Ranger he kept protecting. And through Jace, justice was carried out. This wasn't just the story of a police officer and a dog. It was a story of faith, of reading the quiet signs around us, of trusting that even in the coldest winter, God never stops working. And maybe, just maybe, miracles still walk among us, sometimes on 2 feet, sometimes on 4. If this story touched your heart, let it be a reminder. Never stop believing that healing is possible, justice is real, and love doesn't end at the grave. If you believe animals have souls, that no child should ever be forgotten, and that God sends help in His own time, type Amen in the comments. Let's pray together for every canine still in service, every officer in search of truth, and every lost soul still waiting to be found. Comment below. Share this story with someone who still believes in miracles. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories of courage, love, and redemption. And may God bless you wherever you are watching from. Amen.